Is Britain's net zero drive making us all poorer? And is it to blame for the country's productivity crisis? Hello and welcome, I'm Adam Cherry and this is GB News Originals. Now, I know what you're thinking, isn't this green stuff supposed to be good for us? Just bear with me because we're going to be taking a bit of a ride through some pretty eye-opening stuff. Let's start with the bombshell that's just dropped. It's a new report from Peel Hunt, that's an investment bank, by the way, and it's got everyone talking because they've crunched the numbers and they reckon that our push to go eco-friendly might actually be costing us more than just a few quid on our energy bills. Actually, they're saying it could be the reason why our country is not as productive as it used to be. These researchers noticed something fishy. Back in 2006, our electricity supply started to dip, and wouldn't you know it, that's right when our productivity started to go a bit wonky. Is it a coincidence? Well, they don't think so. They found what they call a clear link between failing energy capacity and weak productivity in Britain. Now, hold on a minute. What's productivity got to do with net zero? It's fundamentally, it's all about how much bang we get for our buck. When our country's productive, it means we're making more stuff, providing more services, and generally getting more done with the resources we have. But according to this report, our net zero drive might be throwing a spanner in the works there. You see, as we've been shutting down our old power plants and trying to switch to renewable energy, we're actually reducing our overall energy capacity. And energy is the lifeblood of any economy. When we don't have enough of it or when it gets too expensive, everything starts to slow down. Now, our government's been telling us there's no downside to this net zero stuff. But this report is calling bull on that. The researchers, Callum Pickering and Charles Hall, reckon that 2 decades of trying to go green, at least so quickly, has led to weaker economic growth, sky-high energy prices, and we've been losing our industries left, right, and centre. Now, Labour pledged to decarbonise the UK's electricity grid by 2030 as part of accelerating net zero efforts. And not the only ones, of course. It was prior governments, Boris Johnson's government, that started this process, Theresa May as well. And since entering Downing Street, Keir Starmer has lifted the de facto ban on onshore wind farms in England and given consent for a slew of solar projects. And the PM has hailed net zero as one of the economic opportunities of this century.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
And the PM has hailed net zero as one of the economic opportunities of this century. And to be fair, he's not alone. The business bigwigs are backing him up. They're pointing to a whopping £83 billion boost for the net zero sector last year. So That's a lot of green in more ways than one. But the Tories have said the UK's net zero target leaves us economically worse off, and admitted putting the 2050 deadline into law was a mistake they made when in power. Well, you don't say. Now, let's just go back to that Peel Hunt report for a second. So the authors, Callum Pickering, Charles Hall, have written, and I quote, "Our analysis challenges the government's claim that there is no trade-off between net zero and economic growth. 2 decades of expertise suggests otherwise." So in other words, they're saying you can't have your cake and eat it. The government's been telling us we can go green and grow rich at the same time, but these researchers are pouring cold water on that. Now, I know some of you might be thinking about this. What about the 2008 financial crash? Didn't that mess things up as well? You're absolutely right, and the researchers acknowledge that. The crash did inflict some real lasting damage on our economy that we're still feeling today. But here's the thing, our productivity has continued to weaken. It's actually gotten worse recently. This oddity, as they call it, suggests there's another factor at play. And they reckon that factor is our relentless net zero drive. So what does that mean for you and me? What does it mean for all of us? Well, if the researchers are right, it could mean our standard of living is about to take a big hit, if it hasn't already. We might be falling behind other countries when it comes to getting stuff done. And those energy bills, they're going up and up and up and up. I'm sure you're noticing at home. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should chuck the whole net zero idea out the window. Absolutely not. What we need is a bit of common sense on this. We need to find a way to look after our planet without breaking the bank or tanking our economy or punishing the less well off. I think that's really important to bear in mind all this. We're making a trade-off and we have to acknowledge it. So we've got some big questions to answer. How do we balance going green with keeping our economy strong and keeping more money in people's pockets? Should we still be using some of the old energy sources while we figure this out? The government does say we need to rely on natural gas and so on for years to come. Maybe we need to be drilling a little bit more of our own and finding our own energy resources. And how on earth do we stop our energy bills from eating up all our hard-earned cash? So the implications of this report and the research is going into all of this stuff. It goes way beyond policy wonk, nitty-gritty detail. It's actually about the money in your pocket and the opportunities for your kids and for future generations. Because if the analysis holds true, families across the UK are already feeling the pinch of higher energy costs. I bet you are. I bet you are already. You're feeling stagnating living standards. It's not just individuals, whole regions could be affected by this, especially areas that have traditionally relied on energy-intensive industries. Obviously, we want to do our bit for the planet, but we need to be smart about how we do it. It might be time for politicians to just step back a bit and think about whether we're moving too fast with some of these measures. Maybe a more gradual approach would be better for our wallets and our economy. And by the way, here's another thing to consider. How does all this affect Britain's place in the world? If other countries are managing to go green without taking such a big economic hit, we could end up at a disadvantage. Of course, there are other huge emitters like China that don't give a damn about any of this stuff. So we need to bear that in mind as well. If we're emitting 1% of global carbon emissions, what really does our contribution, what difference does it make? We're sort of cutting off our nose to spite our face. The Peel Hunt report doesn't just look at the UK in isolation. They've gone and compared our approach to the United States. And here is what the report said about that. While the US has been growing its living standards while keeping its per capita energy consumption roughly stable, much like the UK did from 1990 to 2005, the UK has been holding its living standards broadly stable while cutting per capita energy consumption. They said if the government can stay on track with plans to build new renewable capabilities, electricity supplies can rise sharply, they added, although they warned new technologies such as artificial intelligence would ramp up energy demands. The Confederation of British Industry suggests that the net zero sector in the UK has become a powerhouse of job creation and economic expansion. But this report clearly states the opposite. So the net zero debate is far from over, and it's going to affect all of us. Keep your eyes peeled, stay informed, and don't forget to speak up. After all, it's our future we're talking about here. And remember, whether you're for net zero or you have your doubts, we're all in this together, aren't we? Let's make sure we can get it right. Well, of course, the net zero debate is far from over and it's going to affect us all. So I'm really interested in what you think about this debate. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to GB News' YouTube channel.